Please, I don't know where he is. The words scraped raw from Amara's throat as icy water cascaded down her face, soaking through her vintage Lagos concert t-shirt. The alley behind Sunset Boulevard's neon-soaked clubs reeked of garbage and broken dreams. 3 men surrounded her, their faces hidden behind expensive surgical masks, the kind that screamed cartel money in 2023 Los Angeles. Lies, growled the tallest enforcer, his voice carrying a thick Cuban accent. The blade pressed deeper against her brown skin, just beneath her collarbone. Ji-hoon owes Senor Castillo 100,000. You're his woman. You pay. I'm not. We're not together anymore. Amara's voice cracked as smartphones emerged from jacket pockets, red recording lights blinking like predatory eyes. He left me with nothing. The man with the knife laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Then you sing for your supper, princessa. Or you bleed for his mistakes. Amara's fingers found the small photo tucked in her jeans pocket, her parents standing outside their Lagos home, before Ji-hoon's gambling destroyed everything. Before they disowned him, and, by extension, her. The image crumpled as her hands shook. World star, baby. One enforcer held his phone higher, already typing captions. Humiliated for his debt. This shit's going viral. The blade traced along her throat, not quite breaking skin. Amara closed eyes, her grandmother's Yoruba prayers flooding her mind. When she opened them, the men were already walking away, phones still recording her collapse onto the filthy concrete. Her knees hit first, then her palms, scraping against broken bottle glass. The Lagos photo fluttered away in the Los Angeles wind. 6 hours later, Amara's phone buzzed with notification after notification. The video had exploded across TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Comments flooded in, some sympathetic, most cruel. Nigerian scammer gets karma. Probably illegal anyway. She knew what she was getting into. Her studio apartment in Koreatown felt smaller than ever. The walls, once covered with her music awards and family photos, now bore only rectangular shadows where her life used to hang. Everything valuable had been sold months ago to cover Ji-hoon's smaller debts. Before the big one. Before everything went nuclear. She pulled up her contacts, thumb hovering over her mother's number. 3 months since they'd spoken. 3 months since her mother had said, "You chose that boy over your family. Live with the consequences." The phone rang once before going to voicemail. "Mama, it's me." Her voice cracked again. "I know you said not to call, but the line went dead. Number blocked." Amara opened her banking app. $47. Her last gig at the Sunset Strip venue had been canceled after the manager saw the viral video. "Bad for our image," he'd said, not meeting her eyes. The Castillo cartel owned half the nightlife scene in LA, Cuban-American money laundering through legitimate businesses, digital cash scams targeting college students, and enough political connections to make problems disappear. Julian Castillo, the heir apparent, had built an empire that made his father's old Miami operation look like a corner store. A knock echoed through her apartment. Amara froze, recognizing the rhythm. 2 short, 3 long, 2 short. Cartel code. "Open up, sweetheart. We're not here to hurt you." The woman's voice carried authority wrapped in silk. Amara cracked the door, chain still attached. A Latina woman in an expensive white suit stood in the hallway, flanked by 2 men in matching black. "I'm Maria Santos, Senor Castillo's advisor. You have something he wants." "I already told your people I don't know where Ji-hoon is." Maria's laugh was musical, dangerous. "Oh, honey. He doesn't want Ji-hoon. He wants you." The chain snapped easily when they pushed inside. Amara's apartment, already sparse, became a crime scene in minutes. Cushions sliced open, drawers dumped, even her grandmother's jewelry box, empty now, sold for Ji-hoon's debts, lay shattered on the floor. Such a shame, Maria said, examining Amara's demo CD collection. All this talent, wasted on a man who didn't deserve it. In the wreckage, something glinted. A locket, small and gold, tucked beneath her overturned mattress. Amara had never seen it before. Inside, The photo of a young Cuban woman with Julian Castillo's dark eyes stared back at her. "Where did this come from?" she whispered. Maria's expression shifted, something like pain flickering across her features. That's not supposed to be here." Before Amara could ask more, they were dragging her toward the door. The Babylon Club sat like a crown jewel on Melrose Avenue, its glass facade reflecting the city's neon soul. Inside, money flowed like water, cryptocurrency transactions disguised as bottle service, influencers unknowingly laundering cartel funds through sponsored posts, and enough security to staff a small army. Julian Castillo watched from his private booth as Amara was escorted onto the main floor. At 32, he carried himself like a man who'd inherited both wealth and violence. His Cuban father's political connections merged with his own generation's technological savvy. The family business had evolved far beyond Miami's cocaine cowboys. "She's smaller than I expected," he murmured to Carlos, his head of security. "Don't let the size fool you, Chief." The girl's got fire. Julian's dark eyes tracked Amara as she was positioned near the club's central stage. The DJ cut his set mid-song, and conversations died as spotlights converged on the small figure clutching the mysterious locket. "Ladies and gentlemen," Julian's voice carried over the sound system, "tonight we have a special performance. From someone who owes us a debt." Amara's hands shook as she was handed a microphone. The club's patrons, mostly wealthy 20-somethings and industry insiders, pulled out phones in unison. Live streams began instantly. I'm not prepared," she stammered. "Then you'd better get prepared quickly," Julian replied, his voice carrying an edge that silenced the entire room. The backing track began, a slow, haunting melody that reminded Amara of her grandmother's evening songs. Without conscious thought, she began to sing in Yoruba, her voice carrying across the silent club like a prayer made manifest. The words spoke of exile, of love that destroyed, of choices that bound souls together across oceans and generations. Every eye in the room fixed on her as the language her grandmother had taught her painted pictures of loss and longing that transcended translation. Julian leaned forward in his booth, something shifting in his expression. When the song ended, the silence stretched for heartbeats before erupting into applause. Comments flooded the live streams, voice of defiance. "Who is this girl?" Babylon Club's secret weapon. "Interesting," Julian said into his microphone. "Carlos, bring her up." The private booth overlooked the entire club like a command center. Amara found herself seated across from Julian Castillo, the man whose cartel had turned her life into a viral nightmare. Up close, he was younger than she'd expected, with intelligent eyes that seemed to catalog every detail. "You speak Yoruba," he said. "It wasn't a question. My grandmother taught me, before she died." "And Jihoon? What did he teach you?" Amara's jaw tightened. "How to trust the wrong person." Julian smiled, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. "Smart girl. Tell me, how much do you know about your boyfriend's activities?" "Ex-boyfriend. And I know he gambled. I know he lost. I know he ran. He lost a lot more than money, Amara." Julian pulled out his phone, swiping to a video. "Recognize this?" The security footage showed Jihoon in what looked like an underground casino, cards scattered across green felt. But it wasn't the gambling that made Amara's blood freeze. It was the woman beside him, laughing as she kissed his cheek. The same woman from the locket. "Who is she?" Julian's expression darkened.
Was.
"Elena Castillo. My sister." The booth suddenly felt smaller, the air thinner. "Was. 3 months ago, Elena was found dead in her car. Overdose, the coroner said. But Elena didn't use drugs." His fingers drummed against the table. "She did, however, fall in love with men who owed dangerous people money." Amara's phone buzzed. A WhatsApp voice note from Jihoon, his first contact in weeks. His voice sounded thin, desperate. "Amara, I'm sorry. I can't come back. They'll kill me if they find me. Take care of yourself. I never meant for any of this." Julian's hand moved faster than thought, snatching the phone before Amara could react. His face went cold as stone listening to the message. "So," he said, setting the phone down with deliberate care, He's still alive. Still running. Still leaving you to pay for his choices. The booth's soundproof glass suddenly felt like a cage. Julian reached inside his jacket, and Amara's heart stopped as metal glinted in the club's strobing lights. The gun appeared smooth, practiced, the barrel pointing directly at her chest. Around them, the club continued its oblivious celebration, but in their glass prison, time had crystallized. "I'm going to give you a choice, Amara," Julian said, his voice deadly calm. "The same choice Jihoon should have made 3 months ago when my sister started falling for his lies." Amara's hands gripped the table's edge. "What choice?" "6 months. You perform here every night until your voice pays off his debt. $100,000 plus interest." The gun didn't waver. "Or I put a bullet in you right now and hunt Jihoon down like the coward he is." I made the worst decision of my life that day. But before I explain how it destroyed everything I'd built, subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because you need to understand what desperation can make a mother do. And if I agree? Amara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "Then you become part of the family business. Permanently." Julian's smile returned, sharp as a blade. "Because in my experience, debts of the heart are much harder to collect than debts of money." The gun remained steady, waiting for her answer. In the reflection of the booth's glass, Amara could see the club below, all those phones still recording, still streaming her humiliation to the world. But she could also see something else, the way Julian's eyes had softened when she sang, the pain that flickered across his face when he mentioned his sister. "Choose," he said, thumb finding the gun's safety. "Him or us." "Yes." The single word hung between them like a signed contract written in blood. Julian's thumb moved away from the safety, but the gun remained steady. "Yes to performing, or yes to joining the family?" Amara met his gaze directly. "Both. If it keeps Jihoon alive and gets me out of this mess." "Smart choice." The gun disappeared as smoothly as it had appeared. "Maria will explain the terms. Welcome to Babylon, little bird." 3 weeks into her residency, Amara had learned the rhythm of survival. Every night at 9, she took the stage. Every night, the crowd grew larger, drawn by videos of the mysterious Nigerian singer whose voice could make grown men weep. Every night, she sang her grandmother's songs and felt pieces of her soul chip away. "Another stellar performance," Maria said, approaching Amara's dressing room with her usual predatory smile. "Though I notice some tension in the audience tonight." Through her mirror, Amara watched the club's patrons through the one-way glass. Designer clothes, cryptocurrency millionaires, and enough plastic surgery to stock a medical supply warehouse. But she'd also noticed the pointed stares, the whispered conversations that stopped when she passed. "Let me guess. Your boss's girlfriend doesn't appreciate the competition." Valentina Santos isn't just Julian's girlfriend. She's also my cousin, and she has a very long memory. Maria's reflection appeared behind Amara's. "I'd be careful if I were you." Amara's phone buzzed. Another notification from her Instagram, which had exploded from 300 followers to over 50,000 since her first Babylon performance. Most comments were supportive, but tonight's batch carried a different edge. "At Babylon Princess thinks she owns the place now. Someone needs to remind the help where they belong. Julian's just slumming. She'll be gone next month." The account posting them all traced back to @Valentina Santos, a verified influencer with 2 million followers and a face carved by Beverly Hills' finest surgeons. "She's been posting about you all week," Maria continued. "Twitter, TikTok, Instagram stories. Nothing actionable, but enough to make your life complicated." Amara set her phone aside and began removing her stage makeup. The face staring back at her looked thinner than 3 weeks ago, stress carving hollows beneath her cheekbones. "I need to send money home," she said quietly. "Home to Nigeria?" "To Jihoon's cousin in Riverside. He's been staying there." Maria's expression sharpened. "Julian doesn't know about this." "Julian doesn't need to know about this." "Honey, Julian knows everything that happens in his territory, including wire transfers from his employees." The dressing room suddenly felt like an interrogation chamber. Amara had been careful, using different apps each time: Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, keeping amounts small, irregular. But if the cartel tracked digital transactions as thoroughly as they monitored everything else? How much have you sent him? Maria's voice carried no judgment, only dangerous curiosity. Enough to keep him fed. That's all. Amara, look at me. Maria's hands found her shoulders, spinning her around. Julian's sister died because she tried to save a man who wasn't worth saving. Don't make her mistake. Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed again. This time, the notification made her blood freeze. Unknown number. Pay or bleed. 72 hours. Koreatown. We know where you live. The message included a photo, her apartment building's entrance, taken from across the street. Recent, judging by the timestamp. Maria? But when Amara looked up, she was alone in the dressing room. The door stood ajar, and through it, she could hear Julian's voice carrying across the club's main floor. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears our songbird has an admirer. The main lights dimmed as Amara emerged from the dressing room. On the club's massive LED screens, her threatening text message displayed for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd, phones appearing like fireflies as the room erupted in whispered speculation. Julian stood at the bar, his expression unreadable. Amara, join me. Please. The walk across the club floor felt like a death march. Every face tracked her movement, every conversation stopped mid-sentence. By tomorrow, this would be viral content. Death threat at Babylon Club. Drink, Julian offered as she approached. Information. Who sent that? Someone who doesn't understand the rules. He signaled the bartender, who immediately began preparing 2 drinks. In my business, threats are negotiations. This was just poor communication. The cocktail he handed her tasted like expensive whiskey and honey. Amara had never been much of a drinker, but tonight seemed like an appropriate time to start. Is this going to be a problem? She asked. Everything's a problem until it isn't. Julian's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his jaw tightening. Carlos, clear the VIP section. We need to talk. The private booth felt different this time, less like a cage, more like a war room. Julian's laptop displayed multiple screens, security feeds, financial tracking software, and what looked like a digital map of Los Angeles marked with red and green dots. The message came from a burner phone purchased in Koreatown this afternoon, he said, fingers flying across the keyboard. Paid for with cash, but the store has security cameras. You can track all that? Welcome to modern organized crime. We're not your grandfather's mafia. The laptop screen shifted to show surveillance footage of a thin Korean man purchasing phones at an electronics store. Recognize him? Amara's stomach dropped. That's Min-jun, Ji-hoon's cousin. The same cousin you've been sending money to? There was no point lying now. Yes. Julian closed the laptop with a decisive snap. Then we have a problem. The silence stretched between them, filled with the club's distant bass line and the weight of unspoken possibilities. Finally, Julian stood and walked to the booth's window, looking down at his empire. My father built this business on loyalty, he said. You betray the family, you die. Simple. Clean. But loyalty is complicated when emotions get involved. Are you going to kill me? I'm going to teach you to protect yourself. He turned back to face her. Because if Min-jun is desperate enough to threaten you directly, Ji-hoon's debts have spread beyond my organization. The next afternoon, Amara found herself in Babylon's basement, a space that officially didn't exist. Concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, and enough exercise equipment to train a small army. Julian waited in the center, wearing athletic clothes that showed off the kind of muscle mass that didn't come from casual gym visits. Self-defense isn't about strength, he said, tossing her a pair of boxing gloves. It's about leverage, timing, and knowing your opponent's weaknesses. I've never hit anyone in my life. Then today's full of firsts. The first lesson was stance, balance, how to move without telegraphing intent. Julian's hands guided her shoulders, adjusted her feet, positioned her arms with clinical precision. But when their eyes met in the mirrored wall, something electric passed between them. You're tensing up, he said, his voice softer than usual. You're standing very close. Would you prefer I stand further away? Instead of answering, Amara threw her first punch. It connected with the heavy bag in a satisfying thud that sent vibrations up her arm. Better, Julian smiled. Now try it with anger. At who? At everyone who's made you feel helpless. The men in the alley. The people commenting on your videos. Ji-hoon for leaving you to clean up his mess. The next punch came harder, followed by another and another. With each impact, months of suppressed rage found release. Julian moved behind her, adjusting her form, his breath warm against her ear as he counted rhythm. Good. Now in Yoruba. What? Count in Yoruba. Make it yours. Okan, Meiji, Meta, Marin. The numbers fell from her lips like incantations, each one punctuated by leather striking canvas. Julian's hands found her waist, steadying her stance, and she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. You're beautiful when you're angry, he said quietly. Amara stopped mid-punch, turning to face him. They stood inches apart, breathing hard, sweat gleaming on both their skin. The basement's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows, but Julian's eyes held something warm and dangerous. This is a bad idea, she whispered. Most of the best ideas are. Before either could lose their nerve, alarms began blaring throughout the building. Red emergency lights flooded the basement as Julian's phone exploded with notifications. Raid, he said, already moving toward the emergency exit. DEA, probably. Someone tipped them off. They ran through service corridors Amara didn't know existed, Julian's hand gripping hers as they navigated the building's hidden arteries. Behind them, she could hear shouting, doors splintering, the systematic destruction of Julian's empire. The garage, he panted, pulling her toward a steel door marked, authorized personnel only. They burst into the underground parking structure just as the first federal agents reached the main floor. Julian's Maserati sat in the corner, engine already running thanks to remote start technology. Get in. Amara dove into the passenger seat as Julian gunned the engine. They screamed up the exit ramp just as black SUVs converged on the club's main entrance. Where are we going? Somewhere they can't follow. The car chase that followed played out across downtown Los Angeles, like an action movie. Julian drove with supernatural skill, threading between traffic, taking corners at speeds that should have been impossible. Behind them, 2 DEA vehicles tried to keep pace. Hold on, Julian warned, yanking the wheel hard left. The Maserati skidded through a red light, tires smoking against asphalt. One pursuing SUV tried to follow and clipped a city bus, spinning out in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. They lost the second vehicle in the maze of downtown's one-way streets, finally pulling into the parking garage of a high-rise residential building. Julian's hands shook slightly as he turned off the engine. That was... Amara started. Terrifying? Exhilarating? Stupid. All three. They sat in silence for a moment, adrenaline slowly fading into exhaustion. Then Julian began to laugh, a sound Amara had never heard from him before, genuine and almost boyish. What's funny? Elena used to love car chases. She'd make me drive fast whenever we went anywhere, said it reminded her that life was worth living dangerously. The mention of his sister sobered them both. Amara reached for the locket she now wore constantly, feeling its weight against her chest. Tell me about her. Julian's expression grew distant. Elena was light. That's the only way to describe her. She could walk into a room and make everyone feel like they mattered. She spoke 4 languages, had a degree from USC, could have done anything with her life. But she chose Ji-hoon. She chose love. Or what she thought was love. His fingers drummed against the steering wheel. Elena believed she could save him. Fix him. Make him worthy of the sacrifice she was willing to make. What sacrifice? She was going to leave the family. For him. Father would have disowned her, cut off her trust fund, made her disappear from our world entirely. She was ready to give up everything. Amara's throat tightened, but he got her killed instead. Before Amara could respond, Julian's phone exploded with notifications. Security alerts, emergency contacts, panic buttons activated across his network. On the laptop screen, red dots began disappearing from the digital map. "They're hitting us everywhere at once," he whispered. The building's fire alarm began shrieking as emergency lighting flooded the penthouse. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Amara could see smoke rising from 3 different directions across the city. "We need to leave. Now." They took the service elevator to the parking garage, but Julian stopped short when they reached his car. The Maserati's windshield had been spiderwebbed by something heavy, and a knife protruded from the driver's seat. "Back up slowly," Julian murmured, his hand moving to the gun beneath his jacket. 3 figures emerged from behind concrete pillars, Asian men in dark clothing, faces hidden behind surgical masks. The center figure held a combat knife that caught the garage's fluorescent lighting. "Julian Castillo," the man said in accented English. "You have something that belongs to us." "I have nothing that belongs to you." "The woman. She knows where Park Ji-hoon is hiding." Julian stepped protectively in front of Amara. "The woman is under my protection." "Not anymore." The knife moved faster than thought, slashing through the air where Julian's throat had been milliseconds before. He spun away, drawing his gun, but the other 2 attackers were already moving. Amara found herself pressed against a concrete pillar, watching Julian fight for his life with deadly grace. Each movement was calculated, efficient, brutal. When the shooting stopped, all 3 attackers lay motionless on the garage floor. "Are you hurt?" Julian asked, blood seeping from a cut above his eye. "No." "You? I'll live." He pulled out his phone, speed dialing Carlos. "We need a cleanup crew at the Meridian Tower. 3 bodies, level B2. On the way, Chief." Julian hung up, studying Amara's pale face. "This is what my life looks like. Violence, blood, death. Are you sure you want to be part of it?" Instead of answering, she kissed him. The kiss was desperate, hungry, filled with adrenaline and the knowledge that they might not survive the night. Julian's hands tangled in her hair as she pressed against him, tasting copper and danger on his lips. "We should go," he whispered against her mouth. "Where?" "Somewhere we can think. Plan. Figure out how to end this without everyone dying." They took one of Julian's backup cars, a nondescript Honda that looked like every other vehicle in Los Angeles. Rain began falling as they drove through downtown, washing the city's sins into the storm drains. "There's something I need to tell you about Elena," Julian said as they sat at a red light. "What?" "She was pregnant when she died." The words hit Amara like physical blows. "Pregnant? 3 months. The coroner's report was classified, but I have connections." Julian's knuckles went white, gripping the steering wheel. "Ji-hoon got my sister pregnant, then got her killed trying to pay off his debts." Rain drummed against the windshield as traffic crawled around them. In the distance, sirens wailed, police, fire department, ambulances racing toward the latest explosion in the city's underground war. "That's why you want him dead. That's why he deserves to die." They drove in silence to a safe house in Eagle Rock, a modest 2-bedroom home that looked like every other property on the quiet residential street. Inside, Julian began making calls while Amara tried to process everything she'd learned. Elena had been pregnant. Elena had died trying to save a man who'd gotten her pregnant and then abandoned her to clean up his mistakes. The parallels to her own situation made Amara's stomach churn. "The family council voted," Julian announced, ending his final call. "And they want you delivered to the Bratva by midnight. 1 life for the end of hostilities." "What did you tell them?" "That they'd have to go through me first." Julian moved to the window, checking the street through Venetian blinds. His phone buzzed with another encrypted message that made his face go pale. "What now?" Carlos just confirmed it. Ji-hoon attempted to rob a cryptocurrency exchange in downtown 3 hours ago. Security cameras caught everything. He showed her the video, grainy surveillance footage of a thin Korean man fumbling with what looked like a homemade explosive device. The robbery lasted less than 2 minutes before Ji-hoon fled empty-handed, leaving behind evidence that would bring every law enforcement agency in California down on anyone connected to him. He's getting desperate, Amara said. He's getting people killed. 4 of my men were arrested in connection with the exchange robbery because Ji-hoon used information Elena gave him months ago. The safe house suddenly felt smaller, the walls closing in as the weight of Ji-hoon's cascading failures crushed down on them. Amara's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We know where you are. Come outside alone, or we start shooting." Through the window, she could see vehicles parked at both ends of the street. Not police cars, black SUVs with tinted windows and too many antennas. Julian. He read the message over her shoulder, his face hardening into the mask she'd first seen in Babylon's VIP booth. "Stay here. Lock the doors. Don't come out until I come back." "Where are you going?" "To end this." Julian grabbed his gun and headed for the back door, but Amara caught his arm. "Don't leave me alone. Please." Something in her voice stopped him. When he turned back, his expression had softened slightly. "Come on. But stay behind me and do exactly what I say." They slipped out through the safe house's rear exit into an alley that reeked of garbage and broken dreams. Rain continued falling, turning the night into a noir film where every shadow hid potential death. "This way," Julian whispered, leading her toward a gap in the fence that separated the residential area from a strip mall. Behind them, she heard the safe house's front door explode inward. Shouts in multiple languages, Korean, Russian, Spanish, echoed through the rainy night. They reached Julian's backup vehicle just as the shooting started. Bullets shattered the strip mall's windows, sending glass raining down like deadly confetti. "Get in," Julian shouted, gunning the engine. They tore out of the parking lot as muzzle flashes lit up the night behind them. In the rearview mirror, Amara watched the safe house burn. "Where are we going now?" "To confront the problem at its source." Julian drove with grim determination through the city's maze of freeways and surface streets. The radio crackled with news reports about gang violence, multiple shootings, and what reporters were calling the worst night of criminal activity in Los Angeles history. "This is all because of Ji-hoon," Amara said. "This is because of choices. His choices, Elena's choices, your choices." Julian's voice carried no accusation, only exhaustion. "And now my choices." They pulled into an industrial area near the port of Los Angeles, where shipping containers stacked like metal mountains under harsh sodium lights. Julian's phone guided them to a specific warehouse where several cars were already parked. "Family meeting," he explained. "About you." The debts, the pressure, the constant fear. It broke her. The night she died, she'd been arguing with Ji-hoon for hours. Neighbors heard screaming, crying. By morning, she was dead in her car, needle in her arm, but Elena had never used drugs in her life. "You think he killed her?" "I think his choices killed her. There's a difference, but not much of one." Julian's phone buzzed with an encrypted message. His face darkened as he read. "What is it?" The raid wasn't random. Someone fed them specific information about tonight's operations. He looked at her directly. "Someone with access to internal communications." If you're watching this thinking, I would have done the same thing. Subscribe to Mystic Tale by Luna. Because the choice she's about to make will change 3 lives forever. The implication hung between them like a loaded weapon. Amara had been sending money to Ji-hoon's cousin, communicating through channels the cartel monitored. If Min-jun had been compromised, if the DEA had flipped him. "Julian, I never told anyone about your operations." "I believe you. But belief and proof are different things in my business." They drove in silence to Julian's penthouse, a glass tower overlooking the city's sprawling grid. The apartment was minimalist, expensive, and utterly impersonal except for one wall covered in photographs of Elena. Childhood pictures, graduation photos, candid shots of a young woman with Julian's dark eyes and their father's commanding presence. "She would have liked you," Julian said, following Amara's gaze. "How can you be sure?" "Because she always rooted for the underdog." The kitchen was restaurant quality, all stainless steel and granite surfaces. Julian moved with surprising grace, pulling ingredients from a refrigerator that cost more than most people's cars. "You cook." "Elena taught me." said a man who couldn't feed himself wasn't worth a woman's time. He began dicing onions with professional precision. What's your comfort food? Jollof rice. My grandmother's recipe. Show me. For the next hour, they cooked together in companionable silence. Amara guided Julian through the delicate balance of spices that made authentic jollof rice, while he shared techniques Elena had learned during a semester in Paris. The simple act of creating something together felt more intimate than any conversation they'd shared. Taste, Amara said, offering him a spoon. Julian's eyes closed as he chewed thoughtfully. This is incredible. Elena would have demanded the recipe. It's not really a recipe. It's more like a prayer. My grandmother said good jollof rice required love, patience, and a willingness to trust your instincts. Sounds like good advice for more than just cooking. They ate on the penthouse's balcony, the city spreading out below them like a circuit board of light and possibility. For the first time since this nightmare began, Amara felt something approaching peace. The locket, Julian said suddenly. Where exactly did you find it? Under my mattress after your people searched my apartment. But I'd never seen it before. Julian's expression grew troubled. Elena lost that locket the week before she died. She was frantic, turned her apartment upside down looking for it. How would it have gotten into my place? Only one person had access to both locations. The realization hit them simultaneously. Ji-hoon had been in Elena's apartment. Ji-hoon had been in Amara's apartment. Ji-hoon had taken the locket from a dead woman and hidden it with his ex-girlfriend, insurance against a future he must have seen coming. Julian's phone buzzed with another encrypted message. This one made him stand abruptly, his face pale. What now? Ji-hoon's debts just got worse. 3 different organizations are hunting him, and Min-jun just told them all exactly where to find you. The message included an attachment, an email thread between Min-jun and someone identified only as JK. The conversation laid out detailed plans to trade information about Amara's location for Ji-hoon's safety. He's selling me out to save his cousin, Amara whispered. Worse. He's starting a war between 3 cartels, and you're ground zero. Julian was already moving toward his bedroom, returning with a gun case and body armor. The man who'd cooked jollof rice with her had disappeared, replaced by the cartel heir who'd built an empire on calculated violence. Pack light. We're leaving the city tonight. Where are we going? Somewhere Ji-hoon's mistakes can't follow us. Julian's eyes met hers, and she saw something that might have been an apology. But first, we're going to collect some insurance of our own. The email thread included one final detail that made everything clear: an address in Riverside where Ji-hoon was hiding, and a plan to exchange him for Amara's freedom. The trap was already set. All they had to do was walk into it. Ji-hoon dies tonight. Julian's words cut through the penthouse silence like a blade. He stood at his laptop, scanning encrypted messages that painted Los Angeles in digital red zones. 3 cartel territories, all converging on a single point in Riverside. You can't just execute him, Amara said, her voice hollow. I can't let him start a war that kills hundreds of innocent people. Julian's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up surveillance feeds from across the city. The Bratvo wants him for stealing their cryptocurrency wallets. The Sinaloa cartel wants him for moving product through their territory without permission. And the Yakuza wants him because he used their money laundering operation as collateral for other bets. Each organization's territory appeared on his screen in different colors, overlapping circles of influence that all intersected at one address: 2847 Magnolia Avenue, Riverside. How much does he owe total? Combined? Nearly $500,000. Plus interest that's been compounding for 6 months. Amara sank into the leather couch, Elena's locket burning against her skin. There has to be another way. There was. 3 months ago, when Elena tried to save him. Julian's jaw tightened. Now she's dead, and every criminal organization in Southern California wants blood. The laptop chimed with an incoming video call. Julian's father appeared on screen, Sebastian Castillo, a man whose presence commanded respect even through digital pixels. His weathered face bore the scars of building an empire from nothing. Mijo, we have a problem. I'm aware, Papa. The Koreans just hit our Koreatown operation. Burned out 2 of our money exchanges, killed 3 of our people. Sebastian's voice carried the weight of decades in this business. They left a message. Give us the gambler or lose everything. Julian's hands clenched into fists. The Koreans? Minjun's been busy. Apparently Ji-hoon owes them money too. Sebastian's eyes found Amara through the camera. Is this the girl? Yes, sir. She's prettier than Elena. Let's hope she's smarter. The call ended, leaving them in suffocating silence. Julian poured himself 3 fingers of bourbon, downing it in one swallow. The family council meets in an hour, he said. They're going to vote on whether to hand you over to one of the other organizations as a peace offering. And if they vote yes, then I'll have a choice to make. The warehouse contained Julian's extended organization, men and women who'd built their lives around the Castillo name. They stood in a loose circle around a folding table where Sebastian Castillo sat like a judge preparing to render verdict. Julian, the older man said, "You're late. Traffic. Bring the girl forward." Amara found herself standing in the center of the circle, dozens of eyes examining her like a specimen under a microscope. These people held her life in their hands, and most of them looked like they'd already made their decision. The vote was unanimous, Sebastian announced. Except for one abstention. Julian's jaw tightened. Papa. You abstained, Mijo. Which means the decision is mine. Sebastian stood slowly, his weathered hands resting on the table. And I've decided that anyone who threatens the Castillo family must be eliminated. For a heart-stopping moment, Amara thought he meant her. Then Sebastian's eyes shifted to his son. Ji-hoon Park dies tonight. You will personally deliver his corpse to each organization he's wronged. And if this girl tries to interfere, she dies with him. Understood, Julian said quietly. Good. Carlos has the address where he's hiding. Make it clean, make it quick, and make it final. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely hold the phone. Have you ever felt that moment when everything you believed just shatters? Tell me in the comments, because right now, I need to know I'm not the only one who's been this afraid. As the family meeting dispersed, Amara felt the world tilting around her. Julian had agreed to murder Ji-hoon. The man she was falling for was about to kill the man she'd once loved, and she was powerless to stop either outcome. Julian, please. Not here, he said, guiding her back toward their car. Too many ears. They drove through the industrial wasteland in silence until Julian pulled over beside an abandoned pier. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, dark and vast enough to swallow all their sins. I have to kill him, Julian said finally. I know. If I don't, my father will have us both killed. I know that too. Then why are you crying? Amara touched her cheeks, surprised to find them wet. Because Elena was pregnant. Because Ji-hoon destroyed everything he touched. Because you're going to become a murderer for me. Julian turned to face her fully. I've been a murderer for years, Amara. This won't be my first kill. But it will be personal. They're all personal. A black sedan pulled into the pier's parking area, headlights cutting through the rain. 2 figures emerged, a woman in an expensive dress and a man Amara didn't recognize. Valentina, Julian muttered. What's she doing here? The woman approached their car with predatory confidence, her designer heels clicking against wet asphalt. When she reached Julian's window, she tapped on the glass with perfectly manicured nails. Open up, baby. We need to talk. Julian reluctantly lowered the window. This isn't a good time, Val. It's never a good time when you're with her. Valentina's eyes found Amara through the windshield. But I have information you need. What information? About your little songbird's boyfriend. He's not in Riverside anymore. Julian's entire body went rigid. Where is he? Somewhere much more interesting. Somewhere that's going to make tonight very complicated for everyone involved. Valentina produced her phone, showing them a video that made Amara's blood freeze. Ji-hoon sat tied to a chair in what looked like a basement, his face bloody and swollen. Behind him stood 3 men in expensive suits. The Yakuza found him first, Valentina continued. They're holding an auction. Highest bidder gets to kill him slowly. When? 1 hour. Downtown. The old Kawasaki building. Valentina's smile was razor-sharp. And guess who just got invited to bid? Julian closed his eyes, calculating odds and options. When he opened them, his expression had turned to granite. Get in the car, Val. I thought you'd never ask. As Valentina slid into the back seat, Amara felt the last pieces of her world crumbling. The woman who'd been spreading rumors about her online now sat inches away, bringing information that would determine whether Ji-hoon lived or died. There's one more thing, Valentina said as Julian started the engine. The Yakuza want more than money for him. What do they want? They want the girl too. Apparently, Ji-hoon told them some very interesting stories about Nigerian drug smuggling operations. Amara spun around to face her. I've never smuggled drugs in my life. Doesn't matter what's true, honey. Matters what they believe. Valentina's smile widened. And Ji-hoon is very convincing when he's being tortured. The drive downtown took 20 minutes through rain-slicked streets that reflected the city's neon sins. Julian's phone rang constantly. Updates from his organization, threats from rivals, demands from his father for immediate action. As they approached the Kawasaki building, a converted warehouse in the arts district, Amara could see other vehicles converging from multiple directions. The auction was about to begin. Whatever happens in there, Julian said, parking across the street, remember that everything I do is to keep you alive. What if keeping me alive means letting Ji-hoon die? Then Ji-hoon dies. The building's entrance was guarded by men in dark suits who checked invitations like bouncers at an exclusive club. Inside, the main floor had been converted into an amphitheater with stadium seating surrounding a central stage. Ji-hoon hung suspended in chains above the stage, conscious, but barely. Electronic displays showed bidding amounts in multiple currencies: dollars, yen, rubles, cryptocurrency. The opening bid was $50,000 for exclusive killing rights. Ladies and gentlemen, announced a man in an expensive kimono, let the auction begin. Julian raised his hand. 100,000. A Russian voice called out from across the room. 200,000. 500,000, said someone else. The bidding escalated quickly, each organization trying to claim the right to personally execute Ji-hoon. Amara watched in horror as the man she'd once loved was reduced to a commodity, being sold to the highest bidder. $2 million, Julian announced. The room fell silent. $2 million was more money than some small countries saw in a year. Going once, the auctioneer called. 2.5 million, came a voice from the back of the room. Julian turned to see who had outbid him, and his face went white. Sebastian Castillo stood near the entrance, flanked by his personal security team. Going twice, the auctioneer continued. 3 million, Sebastian called out. The auction ended with Ji-hoon sold to the Castillo family for $3 million, money that would buy his prolonged death and send a message to every criminal organization in North America. As the crowd began to disperse, Sebastian approached his son with the satisfaction of a man who just closed a profitable business deal. He's yours to kill, Mijo. Make it last. But before Julian could respond, the building's lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in as the sound of breaking glass echoed through the warehouse. Police, someone shouted. Everybody down. In the chaos that followed, Amara realized she'd lost sight of Julian. Bodies pressed against her in the darkness as everyone tried to escape through limited exits. Gunshots rang out, whether from police or criminals unclear. When the emergency lighting finally stabilized, she found herself alone near the stage where Ji-hoon still hung in chains. His eyes found hers across the distance, and his lips moved in what might have been her name. I called them, she whispered, pulling out her phone to show him the text she'd sent to LAPD 30 minutes earlier. I'm sorry. Ji-hoon's response was lost in the sound of approaching sirens, but his expression shifted from confusion to something that might have been gratitude. Police flooded the building as Amara slipped toward a side exit. In the parking lot, she found Julian already in their car, engine running. Get in, he said. Now. They drove away as federal agents surrounded the Kawasaki building. In the distance, news helicopters circled like mechanical vultures, broadcasting the city's latest criminal spectacular to the world. "You called the police," Julian said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes." "You destroyed a $3 million deal and probably got Ji-hoon killed anyway." "Maybe. But I couldn't watch you become his executioner." Julian pulled over beside MacArthur Park, the car idling as they sat in loaded silence. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weariness that seemed to age him years. "My father's going to order both our deaths." "I know. The police raid will be traced back to your phone." "I know that too." "Then why did you do it?" Amara fingered Elena's locket, feeling its weight against her skin. "Because someone had to choose love over revenge." Julian's laugh was bitter, exhausted. "Love doesn't stop bullets, Amara." "Maybe not. But it stops some people from pulling triggers." Before Julian could respond, his phone rang. Sebastian's name appeared on the screen like a death sentence. "Papa, the police have Ji-hoon in custody. Federal charges, protective custody, the whole package." Sebastian's voice carried the cold fury of a man whose empire had been publicly humiliated. "Someone tipped them off. I'll find out who. I already know who. The question is what you're going to do about it." The line went dead, leaving them in suffocating silence. Julian stared at his phone like it might explode, then slowly turned to face Amara. "I have 24 hours to bring him Ji-hoon's corpse," he said quietly. "Or deliver yours instead. And if you can't do either, then we both disappear. Permanently." Rain continued falling as they drove through the city's empty streets, two people caught between love and loyalty, racing against a clock that measured their remaining lives in hours rather than years. When they finally reached Amara's apartment, Julian walked her to the door like a gentleman ending a normal date. But as she turned her key in the lock, she heard his gun slide from its holster. "Amara." She turned to find him standing in the shadows, weapon raised but not quite pointing at her. "You have 24 hours to bring me Ji-hoon," he said, his voice carrying no emotion at all. "Federal custody or not. Dead or alive. Or you both die." The door closed between them with the finality of a coffin lid. "Why did you betray me?" Julian stood in Amara's apartment doorway, rain dripping from his hair onto her threshold. The gun in his hand trembled slightly, whether from cold or rage. She couldn't tell. Behind him, the hallway stretched empty and dark, fluorescent lights flickering like dying stars. "I didn't betray you. I saved you." "Saved me?" His voice cracked with exhaustion and fury. "The DEA has Ji-hoon in protective custody. My father wants both our heads. 3 cartels are hunting us. How exactly did you save me?" Amara stepped aside, letting him enter. The apartment felt smaller with his presence, charged with the electricity of two people who'd crossed lines they couldn't uncross. "Because you would have killed him, and killing him would have killed the part of you that Elena loved." Julian's face went white at his sister's name. Don't you dare use her memory to justify what you've done." "Then let me show you something that might." Amara moved to her laptop, Julian's gun tracking her every step. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, accessing an encrypted folder she discovered weeks ago while helping Julian with digital security. Elena left these for Ji-hoon, hidden in a cloud storage account she thought nobody else knew about. The screen filled with email drafts, messages Elena had written but never sent. Julian leaned forward to spite himself, his weapon lowering as his sister's words appeared before him. "My dearest Ji-hoon," he read aloud, his voice barely a whisper. "I know you think you're protecting me by staying away, but you're wrong. Love isn't about protection. It's about choice. And I choose you, despite everything Father says, despite the danger, despite the consequences." Amara scrolled to the next message, dated 3 days before Elena's death. "I'm pregnant, and I'm terrified, but I'm also happy. We can leave Los Angeles together. Start fresh somewhere Father's influence can't reach us. I have money saved, contacts in other cities. We don't have to let your debts define our future." Julian's hand began shaking visibly. "She never sent these. Because she died before she could." But look at the last one. The final email was dated the night Elena died, time-stamped just hours before the coroner estimated her death. I know you think you're a burden, that you've ruined everything you've touched. But you haven't ruined me.
You've saved me.
From a life I never chose, from a family that sees love as weakness, from a future where I would have lived and died without ever feeling truly alive. If something happens to me, know that loving you was the only real choice I ever made. Julian's gun clattered to the floor as he sank into Amara's desk chair. His hands covered his face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She loved him, he whispered. Actually loved him.
Yes.
And he loved her enough to stay away when he thought his presence would get her killed. Amara knelt beside him, her voice gentle. The drugs in her system? I found the toxicology report you had suppressed. Someone forced them into her. Needle marks between her toes, restraint bruises on her wrists. Ji-hoon didn't kill her. Someone else did.
Who?
Before Amara could answer, her apartment window exploded inward. Glass showered the room as 3 figures in tactical gear rappelled through the opening. Julian rolled sideways, reaching for his fallen gun, but a boot kicked it away into the shadows. Julian Castillo, the lead figure said in Russian-accented English. You owe us a conversation. The Bratva had found them. Julian's hands moved with deadly precision, producing a knife from his boot and driving it into the nearest attacker's thigh. The man screamed and stumbled backward, blood soaking through his tactical pants. Amara kitchen, Julian shouted, grappling with the second intruder. She dove toward the kitchen as gunshots erupted behind her. Julian and the Russians fought with brutal efficiency, furniture splintering as bodies crashed through her small living space. In the kitchen, Amara's hands found the knife block. She pulled the largest blade, a chef's knife her grandmother had given her years ago, and turned back toward the chaos. Julian had one man in a chokehold while fighting off the leader with his free hand. Blood streamed from a cut above his eye, and his movements were growing slower, more desperate. Behind you! Amara screamed. The third man, whom she thought Julian had incapacitated, raised a pistol toward Julian's back. Without thinking, Amara lunged forward, driving her grandmother's knife between the man's shoulder blades. He fell forward, weapon clattering across the hardwood floor. Julian finished his chokehold, dropping the second attacker unconscious, then spun to face the leader. You, the Russian said, pointing at Amara. You killed Dmitri. She saved my life, Julian replied, pulling Amara behind him protectively. And now she dies for it. The final gunshot came from the doorway. Minjun stood there, smoking pistol in his hands, as the Bratva leader collapsed with a bullet through his skull. Took you long enough, he said, stepping over the bodies. Julian's eyes went wide. You're working with him? I've been working with the DEA for 6 months, Minjun replied. Ever since they offered to put Ji-hoon in witness protection instead of federal prison. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Minjun, Ji-hoon's cousin, the man they'd thought was betraying them, had been an undercover federal asset all along. The threats, the auction, everything. Theater. To make the other cartels believe Ji-hoon was really being hunted. Minjun holstered his weapon, stepping carefully around the spreading pools of blood. The DEA needed to map every criminal organization in LA. Your boyfriend provided the perfect catalyst. Where is Ji-hoon now? Amara asked. Safe house in Nevada. Federal protection until he testifies against the money laundering operations. Minjun's expression softened slightly. He wanted me to give you this. The letter was written in Ji-hoon's careful handwriting, each word measured and deliberate. Amara, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I need you to understand. Elena's death wasn't my fault, but it was my responsibility. I should have stayed away from her, should have known that loving me would get her killed. I can't undo the choices that led us here, but I can make sure no one else dies because of them. The DEA says my testimony will shut down 3 major criminal enterprises. It's not enough to balance the scales, but it's a start. Live your life. Be happy. Forget I ever existed. Ji-hoon. Amara folded the letter carefully, slipping it into her pocket beside Elena's locket. Around them, sirens wailed as emergency responders converged on her building. "The DEA will be here in 5 minutes," Minjun said. "Julian, you have a choice. Come with us and flip on your father's organization, or disappear and spend the rest of your life running." Julian looked at Amara, then at the carnage surrounding them. "What happens to her?" "She testifies too. Then she gets a new identity, relocation assistance, the full witness protection package." "Together? If that's what you both want." Julian turned to Amara, his eyes searching her face. "New names, new lives, new everything. Are you ready for that?" Instead of answering with words, she kissed him. This time there was no desperation, no adrenaline, no fear of imminent death. Just two people choosing each other despite everything that should have kept them apart. When they broke apart, Julian was smiling. The first genuine smile she'd seen from him since this nightmare began. "Agent Kim," Julian said to Minjun, "let's make a deal." The next 2 years passed in a blur of depositions, trials, and careful anonymity. Julian's testimony brought down the Castillo cartel, the Bratva's West Coast operations, and a dozen smaller criminal enterprises. Jihoon's evidence exposed money laundering schemes that reached into Silicon Valley tech companies and Hollywood studios. Sebastian Castillo died in federal prison, shivved by inmates who disapproved of cooperation with law enforcement. Valentina Santos fled to Colombia, where she started a new cartel with her father's connections. The Yakuza simply disappeared, melting back into legitimate businesses, as if they'd never existed. Through it all, Amara and Julian built something new together. Their government-issued identities, Sarah Martinez and David Rodriguez, felt strange at first, but gradually became real through repetition and choice. They settled in Portland, Oregon, where Amara found work singing at local venues while Julian learned to cook professionally. The city's music scene embraced her blend of Nigerian folk songs and contemporary arrangements, never knowing her voice had once belonged to a woman caught between love and violence. On a Thursday evening in spring, they performed together for the first time at a small club in the Pearl District. Julian accompanied her on guitar while she sang a song she'd written, lyrics in both Yoruba and Spanish, telling the story of two people who'd found each other in the darkness. "This is for Elena," she whispered into the microphone, fingering the locket she still wore, "who taught us that love is worth any sacrifice." The audience was small but enthusiastic, phones recording their performance for social media posts that would rack up thousands of views by morning. Comments poured in praising the mysterious duo who'd appeared from nowhere with voices that could break hearts and heal them in the same breath. After the show, they walked through Portland's empty streets hand in hand, rain misting around streetlights like halos. The city felt safe in a way Los Angeles never had, clean, quiet, full of possibility instead of threat. "I have something to ask you," Amara said as they reached the bridge overlooking the Willamette River. "Anything." She dropped to one knee on the wet pavement, producing a simple band she'd bought with money earned from her singing. "David Rodriguez, will you marry me?" Julian's laugh echoed across the water, pure joy replacing years of accumulated darkness. "Sarah Martinez, I thought you'd never ask." The ring slid onto his finger perfectly, and when he pulled her to her feet for another kiss, neither of them noticed the black sedan parked across the bridge. Inside, two figures watched through telephoto lenses, documenting their location for a report that would be filed in an office building 3,000 miles away. Their kiss lasted long enough for the photographers to capture dozens of images, the kind that would later appear on social media with captions like "Redemption Kiss" and "Love Conquers All." But in the sedan, the watchers weren't DEA agents or federal marshals. They wore expensive suits and spoke in hushed Spanish about debts that transcended government protection and love that couldn't outrun consequences. Elena's death had never been about Jihoon's gambling debts. It had been about family honor, about a young woman who'd tried to leave the life she'd been born into. And now her brother had made the same choice, choosing love over loyalty. Some debts, the watchers knew, could never be forgiven. As Amara and Julian walked away into Portland's misty night, hands intertwined and hearts finally at peace, the sedan's engine started quietly. It followed at a careful distance, maintaining surveillance on two people who believed they'd escaped their past. The report filed that night was brief and professional. Subjects located. Recommend immediate extraction. Family honor demands closure. In a Miami office tower, Sebastian Castillo's younger brother read the report with satisfaction. Julian had cost the family everything: money, respect, territory, blood. The price for such betrayal was higher than love could pay. But Carlos Castillo was a patient man. He'd waited 2 years for this moment, building new alliances while his nephew lived in the illusion of safety. Federal protection only lasted as long as the government found you useful. And Julian Castillo had outlived his usefulness. The war for Elena's memory was far from over. It was just beginning. Carlos picked up his encrypted phone and dialed a number in Portland. "It's time," he said when the call connected. "Bring them both home." The line went dead, and in the distance, thunder rolled across Miami's skyline like the sound of approaching judgment. Some debts bound souls together across generations, and the Castillo family had a long memory for betrayal. Love had saved Julian and Amara from one war, but it had also started another. And this time, there would be no federal agents to save them, no witness protection to hide behind, no new identities to shelter their hearts. Only the endless cycle of violence that had claimed Elena, that had destroyed Jihoon, that would eventually consume everyone who dared to choose love over loyalty in a world built on blood and retribution. The debt of desire was coming due, and payment would be extracted in full.